daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books right here in the live Radha Lane, Houston, Texas, 77018, not 108, 018. It was close. Just on the pathway from Sri Sri Radha Nilamadhava's beautiful temple in their mercy. This is the holy Dham. When a Radha Krishna deity is installed for a certain area around the deity, it is transformed into the holy Dham. And when we read the Srimad-Bhagavatam, like we do every day, 7 days a week, like we do, then this an area and around that area also becomes a holy Dham. So we're expanding the holy Dham, if you like. Welcome everybody out in cyberspace. We hope you're healthy and happy and going forward in your spiritual lives. Now before we recite Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will recite the prayer glorifying the Srimad-Bhagavatam by Srila Sanatana Goswami, one of the most intimate associates and a senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. And this is a very deep and wonderful prayer to help us to understand what we're doing to do devotional service in full consciousness, meaning to do what we do in Krishna consciousness. I heard Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu the other day say, in the material world there's so many needs for so many shastras. It's in the beginning of the Bhagavatam also. There's so many shastras, Dharma shastras, Artha shastras, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and they've all got different rules and regulations. And when Parikshit Maharaj came, all the sages from all over the universe came, and they were discussing with him what he should do at this moment, knowing that he was going to leave his body in 7 days. And they couldn't come to a conclusion because there were different opinions. And then when Shukadev Goswami walked up, just like this is the scene. I don't know if there's a mountain in background, that may be a little artist's conception, but that's the scene. Everybody saw, and they all bowed down to Shukadev Goswami, even though he was 16-year-old, naked, walking around, but they could see just by his physiognomy that this was the person that needs to be heard from. So they all sat him down, and then the Bhagavatam was revealed to everyone as the summum bonum of all the scriptures. Nigamakalpatador galitam palam, the ripened fruit of all the Vedic scriptures. So this is Sanatana Goswami's glorification, and we should not just parrot it, although it is very purifying. Just if we do parrot it, if we just like the sound, it's good and it helps us. But if we tune in and try to understand and go deep, then it will help us in our spiritual lives and help us to enter the Bhagavatam and to be able to see Krishna in the pages of the Bhagavatam. Okay. Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Padaya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who is supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaka Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namosute. my only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada hanamun chagadachin mam premna ritkanta yospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we've come to Drumila, one of the nine Yogendras, the Nava Yogendras, the nine Yogendras, the sons of Rishabhadev. Rishabhadev had 100 sons, and the senior there, the eldest son, was Bharat, and he became the king of the world, and his pastimes are given in the other parts of the Bhagavatam. He became Jad Bharat, actually, eventually. But 9 of the sons became Paramahansa sannyasis, and they wandered around the earth, just like Narada Muni does, just preaching Krishna consciousness. They were fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So they happened upon Nimi's, King Nimi was performing a big sacrifice, and they happened to arrive, and he saw that these were actually knowers of the truth. So he inquired from them in different subjects, which ran the gamut actually of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, from the illusory energy, how it works, how the creation works, how to overcome it, the laws of nature, the types of devotees, pure devotional service, deity worship. Everything has been given in these teachings very nicely, and the purports are beautiful and comprehensive and very, very, very well written. So now we've come to Drumila, and he is going to talk about the incarnations of Krishna. And we're on the 2nd verse of the 4th chapter of the 11th canto. Sri Drumila said, anyone trying to enumerate or describe fully the unlimited qualities of the unlimited, even if a great genius could somehow or other, after a time-consuming endeavor, count all the particles of dust on the surface of the earth, such a genius could never count the attractive qualities of the personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all potencies. Purport. In Nava-Yogendras described all the qualities and pastimes of the Lord. Sri Drumila here explains that only the most foolish person would even attempt such a comprehensive description of the unlimited qualities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead. Such foolish, childish persons, however, are far more advanced than ignorant materialistic scientists, who actually try to describe all knowledge without even referring to the personality of Godhead. In other words, although it is impossible to describe the Lord fully, foolish atheistic scientists attempt to describe all knowledge without even having reached the most preliminary knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Such atheistic persons should be understood to be short-sighted and of very weak intelligence, despite their showy material achievements, which ultimately end in great suffering and destruction. Confirmed. Mayaskancha. Confirmed. It is said that Lord Anantadev himself, with his innumerable tongues, cannot even begin to vibrate completely the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The example given in this verse is very nice. No human being can hope to count the number of particles on the surface of the earth. Therefore, no one should foolishly try to understand the Supreme Lord by his own tiny endeavor. One should submissively hear. All he has to do is bam, bam, bam. He doesn't have to go. One should submissively hear knowledge of God as it is spoken by God Himself in the Bhagavad Gita. And thus one should gradually be elevated to the stage of hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam. According to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by tasting a drop of seawater, one can get a general idea of the flavor of the entire ocean. Similarly, by submissively hearing about the personality of Godhead, one can acquire a qualitative understanding of the absolute truth, although quantitatively, one's knowledge can never be complete. Text 3. When the primeval Lord Narayana created his universal body out of the 5 elements produced from himself, and then entered within that universal body by his own plenary portion, he thus became known as the Purusha. Purport. In this verse, referred to the 5 gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which form the basic building blocks of the material world. When the conditioned living entity enters within these 5 elements, consciously functions of the mind and intelligence. Unfortunately, the consciousness manifest under the modes of material nature is governed by ahankara, or false ego, in which the living entity wrongly considers himself the enjoyer of the material elements. Although the personality of Godhead, Purushottama, enjoys his pure transcendental existence in the spiritual sky, the material elements are also meant for his enjoyment through the process of yajna, or sacrifice. This material world is called Devidam. The Brahma Samhita explains that the Supreme Person is not at all attracted to his inferior energy, Maya. But when the material creation is used in the devotional service of the Lord becomes attracted by the devotion and sacrifice of the living entities. And thus, indirectly, he is also the enjoyer of the material world. We should not think that the pastimes of Lord Narayana as the Supersoul and creator of this universe are on a lower spiritual level than Narayana's eternal pastimes in the spiritual world. Were Lord Narayana in any way to diminish his transcendental bliss and knowledge in his activities of material creation, he would have to be considered a conditioned soul, affected by contact with the illusory potency. But since Lord Narayana is eternally aloof from the influence of Maya, his activities as the Supersoul of this universe are exactly on the same transcendental level as his activities in the spiritual world. All the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are part and parcel of his unlimited spiritual pastimes. Text 4. Within his body are elaborately arranged the 3 planetary systems of this universe. His transcendental senses generate the knowledge-acquiring and active senses of all embodied beings. His consciousness generates conditioned knowledge, and his powerful breathing produces the bodily strength, sensory power, and conditioned activities of the embodied souls. He is the prime mover through the agency of the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and thus the universe is created, maintained, and annihilated. Purport. When a conditioned soul becomes completely exhausted by his strenuous activities, or when he is overcome by disease, death, or fear, he loses all power to manifest practical knowledge, or activities. Thus we should understand that independent of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can neither work nor cultivate knowledge. By the mercy of the Personality of Godhead, the conditioned soul, which is a perverted reflection of the unlimited spiritual body of the Lord. Thus the living entity engages in ignorant materialistic activities for society, friendship, and love. But the entire program, the unforeseen dissolution of the material body. Similarly, our material knowledge is always subject to become null and void within an instant, since the material nature is itself constantly changing. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the prime mover behind the birth, maintenance, and destruction of the universe. And the living entity should try to understand that Personality of Godhead, who has given him so much facility for illusion. The Personality of Godhead actually wants the conditioned soul to surrender to him and regain an eternal life of bliss and knowledge at the Lord's side. The conditioned soul should reason, if the Lord is giving me so much facility to merge into ignorance, surely he will even give more facility to come out of this ignorance if I humbly follow his direction without foolish speculations. This verse describes Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, the second phase of the Purusha incarnations of the Lord. This Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who is glorified in the Purusha Sukta prayers, expands himself as the Supersoul to enter the heart of every living being. Through chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Even in this degraded age, one can find the Supreme Lord within one's heart. The Lord is a person as much as we are, but he is unlimited. Still, a personal, loving relationship exists between the tiny living entity and the unlimited Supreme Lord. In consideration of this personal relationship, Bhakti Yoga is the only suitable process by which to come to the ultimate understanding of our constitutional position as eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. Text 5. In the beginning, the original Supreme Personality manifested the form of Brahma through the material mode of passion in order to create this universe. The Lord manifested his form as Vishnu, the Lord of sacrifice and protector of the twice-born Brahmanas and their religious duties to maintain the universe. And when the universe is to be annihilated, the same Supreme Lord employs the material mode of ignorance and manifests the form of Rudra. The created living beings are thus always subject to the forces of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was described as Adikarta, the original person, responsible for the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world. According to Sridhar Swami, Adikarta, or the original doer, implies subsequent creators, maintainers, and annihilators. Otherwise, there would be no meaning to the word Adi, or original. Therefore, this verse describes that the Absolute Truth expands himself into the guna avatars, or incarnations who carry out the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the universe through the modes of passion, goodness, and ignorance, respectively. It is significant here that although this verse mentions creation through the material mode of passion and annihilation through the material mode of ignorance, it does not mention maintenance by Vishnu through the material mode of goodness. That is because Vishnu is Vishuddha on the platform of unlimited transcendental goodness. Although Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are somewhat affected by their prescribed duties as superintendents of the modes of nature. Lord Vishnu is Vishuddhasattva, completely beyond contamination, even by the material mode of goodness. As described in the Vedas, Natasya Karyam Karanam Chavidyate. The Lord has no occupational duty, whereas Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are understood to be servants of the Lord. Vishnu is completely transcendental. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Vishnu, described in this verse as Kratupati, the Lord of Sacrifice, is understood to have appeared in a previous age as the incarnation Suyagya, the son of Prajapati Ruchi. Whereas Brahma and Shiva faithfully engage in the service to the Supreme Lord, Vishnu is the Supreme Lord himself. And therefore, his activities of maintaining the brahmanas and religious principles, as mentioned in this verse, Dvija, Dharma, Setu, are not occupational duties, but lila. So in addition to being a guna avatar, Vishnu is also a lila avatar, according to Srila Jiva Goswami. The Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, describes the birth of Lord Brahma from the lotus flower emanating from Vishnu, and the subsequent birth of Lord Shiva from the angry eyes of Lord Brahma. Vishnu, however, is the self-manifested personality of Godhead, who enters the material universe by his own internal potency, as stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.8.15. Taloka Padmam Satu Eva Vishnu Pravi Vashat Sarvaguna Babasam. In conclusion, Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Controller, whose personal form is full of eternal existence, knowledge and bliss, who is beginningless, but is the beginning of everything, who is known as Govinda, and who is the original cause of all causes, as stated in Brahma Samhita. Still, that same eternal Lord manifests himself as Brahma and Shiva in the sense that the primeval controllers, Brahma and Shiva, manifest the potency and supreme will of the Lord, although they themselves are not supreme. Text 6. Narayana Rishi, who is perfectly peaceful and is the best of sages, was born as the son of Dharma and his wife Murti, the daughter of Daksha. Narayana Rishi taught the devotional service of the Lord, by which material work ceases, and he himself perfectly practiced this knowledge. He is living even today, his lotus feet served by the greatest of saintly persons. Purport. It is understood that Narayana Rishi spoke transcendental knowledge to the great saintly persons, to great saintly persons such as Narada Muni. On the basis of these teachings, Narada was able to describe Naishkarmyam, or the devotional service of the Lord, which eradicates material work, as mentioned in Srimad-Bhagavatam 1.3.8. Tantram Sattvatam Chasta Naishkarmyam Karmanam Yataha. The Atma Sarupa, or eternal form of the living entity, is devotional service to the personality of Godhead. Shall I read that again? The Atma Sarupa, or eternal form of the living entity, is devotional service to the personality of Godhead. But our perception of our eternal form is covered by a material concept of life, just as our normal understanding of our life is covered by a dream. Naishkarmyam, or the cessation of material, only by the devotional service of the Lord. As stated by Narada Muni himself, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam. Bhagavatam 1.5.12. The process of transforming ordinary karma into Naishkarmya, or transcendental work, is summarized by Srila Prabhupada in his commentary on this verse spoken by Narada Muni. Fruitive work, in which almost all people in general are engaged, is always painful, either in the beginning or at the end. It can be fruitful only when made subservient to the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is confirmed that the result of such fruitive work may be offered for the service of the Lord, otherwise it leads to material bondage. The bona fide enjoyer of the fruitive work is the personality of Godhead, and thus, when it is engaged for the sense gratification of the living beings, it becomes an acute source of trouble. According to the Matsya Purana 3.10, Dharma, the father of Narayan Rishi, was born from the right breast of Brahma and later married 13 of the daughters of Prajapati Daksha. The Lord himself appeared from the womb of Murti Devi. Text 7. King Indra became fearful, thinking that Narayan Rishi would become very powerful by his severe penances and seize Indra's heavenly kingdom. Thus Indra, not knowing the transcendental glories of the incarnation of and his associates to the Lord's residence in Badrikashram, as the charming breezes of spring created a most sensuous atmosphere, Cupid attacked the Lord with arrows in the form of the irresistible glances of beautiful women. Purport. This verse and the following 9 verses illustrate the personality of Godhead's opulence of supreme renunciation. The word atan mahigya, not understanding the glories of the Lord, indicates that King Indra was placing the personality of Godhead on the same level as he himself, considering the Lord an ordinary enjoyer who would be attracted by mundane sex life. Indra's plot to cause the fall down of Narayan Rishi could not affect the Lord, but it reveals the short-sightedness of Indra himself. Because Indra is attached to his heavenly kingdom, he took it for granted that the Supreme Lord was performing austerities to acquire such flickering phantasmagorias as the kingdom of heaven. Tri Dashapur Akasha Pushpayate. Text 8. The primeval Lord, understanding the offense committed by Indra, did not become proud. Instead, he spoke laughingly as follows to Cupid and his followers, who were trembling before him. Do not fear, O mighty Madan, O wind god and wives of the demigods. Rather, please accept these gifts I am offering you and kindly sanctify my ashram by your presence. Purport. The word Gada Vismaya, or free from false pride, is very significant. If one becomes proud by performing severe penances, such penances are considered material. One should not think personality. Sri Narayan could immediately understand the foolishness of Indra, and thus he was amused by the whole situation. Cupid and the heavenly women, understanding their great offense, were trembling before Narayan in fear of receiving a powerful curse. But the Lord's sublime saintly behavior reassured them by saying, Ma Bhai, don't worry about it, and actually offered them nice prasadam and articles of worship. If you do not give me the opportunity to act as hosts to the demigods and other respectable personalities, he said, what will be the use of my ashram? My ashram will be void without the opportunity to receive respectable personalities such as you. Similarly, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is establishing beautiful centers in all the major cities of the world. In some of these centers, such as those in Los Angeles, Bombay, London, Paris, and Melbourne, and Houston, the society has established very gorgeous preaching ashrams. But the Vaishnavas who live in these beautiful buildings feel that the buildings are void if guests do not come to hear about Krishna and chant his holy name. Thus, one may establish a beautiful ashram not for one's personal sense gratification, but to execute Krishna consciousness peacefully and encourage others to take to Krishna consciousness also. Text 9. My dear King Nimi, when Narayana Rishi thus spoke, eradicating the fear of the demigods, they bowed their heads with shame and addressed the Lord as follows, to invoke his compassion. Our dear Lord, you are always transcendental, beyond the reach of illusion. Therefore you are forever changeless. Your causeless compassion toward us, despite our great offense, is not at all unusual in you, since innumerable great sages who were self-satisfied and free from anger and false pride bow down humbly at your lotus feet. Purport. The demigod said, Our dear Lord, although ordinary living entities, such as the demigods and ordinary men, are always disturbed by material pride and anger, you are always transcendental. Therefore, it is not surprising that we fallible demigods could not appreciate your glories. Text 10. The demigods place many obstacles on the path of those who worship you to transcend the temporary abodes of the demigods and reach your supreme abode. Those who offer the demigods their assigned shares in sacrificial performances encounter no such obstacles. But because you are the director, because you are the direct protector of your devotee, he is able to step over the head of whatever obstacle the demigods place before him. Purport. The demigods headed by Kamadeva or Cupid, recognizing their offense at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana Rishi, here point out the insignificant position of the demigods in relation to the Supreme Lord. Just as a farmer must pay a specific percentage of his agricultural profit to the king or political head as tax money, all human beings must offer a percentage of their material wealth to the demigods in sacrifice. In the Bhagavad Gita, however, the Lord explains that the demigods are also his servants, and it is he himself who awards all benedictions through the agency of the demigods. Mayaiva vihitan hitan. Although a Vaishnava or a devotee of the Lord has no need to worship the demigods, being proud of their exalted material position, sometimes resent the exclusive devotion of the Vaishnava to the Lord, and thus try to cause the devotee to fall down, as described in this verse. Sudakrita bhavan tarayaha. But the demigods here point out that Krishna is directly the protector of his devotees. Therefore, so-called impediments become stimuli for further spiritual advancement for a sincere devotee. The demigods here state, we thought, our dear Lord, that we could disturb your consciousness by our foolish tricks. But by your mercy, even your devotees pay little regard to us. So why should you take our foolish behavior seriously? The word yadi here is used to indicate the certainty that Krishna is always the protector of his surrendered devotees. Although there may be many obstacles on the path of the sincere devotee who is preaching the glories of the Lord, Such obstacles increase the determination of the devotee. Shall I repeat that? You wouldn't mind? I thought we'd hear that again. The word yadi is used to indicate the certainty that Krishna is always the protector of his surrendered devotees. Although there may be many obstacles on the path of the sincere devotee who is preaching the glories of the Lord, such obstacles increase the determination of the devotee. Therefore, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the continuous obstacles presented by the demigods form a kind of ladder or stairway upon which the devotee steadily progresses back to the kingdom of God. A similar verse appears in Srimad-Bhagavatam 10.2.33. Tata nate madhavata vakat kvachid brashanti margat toibad suridaha tvayabi gupta bichadanti nirbhaya vinayakani kapamurdaso prabho. O Madhava, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the Goddess of Fortune, if devotees completely in love with you sometimes fall from the path of devotion, they do not fall like non-devotees, for you still protect them. Thus they fearlessly traverse the heads of their opponents and continue to progress in devotional service. Wow. We have your chair here, Maharaj, just waiting. This is such nectar we're hearing here from Drumila that you came just in the right moment. I want to read this last part we just wrote for your pleasure, if you don't mind. Permission from the sages?
Yes.
Okay. Text 10, chapter 4, 11th canto. Drumila is speaking, discussing the incarnations of God. The demigods, this is when Indra sent some demigods in Apsaras to try to cause Narayan Rishi to fall down. The demigods place many obstacles on the path of those who worship you to transcend the temporary abodes of the demigods and reach your supreme abode. Those who offer the demigods their assigned shares in sacrificial performances encounter no such obstacles. But because you are the direct protector of your devotee, he is able to step over the head of whatever obstacle the demigods place before him. Purport. The demigods, headed by Kamadev, or Cupid, recognizing their offense at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, Narayan Rishi, here point out the insignificant position of demigods in relation to the Supreme Lord, just as a farmer must pay a specific percentage of his agricultural profit to the king or political head as tax money. All human beings must offer a percentage of their material wealth to the demigods in sacrifice. In the Bhagavad Gita, however, the Lord explains that the demigods are also his servants, and it is he himself who rewards all benedictions through the agency of the demigods. Mayaiva Bihitan Hitan. Although a Vaishnava or a devotee of the Lord has no need to worship the demigods being proud of their exalted material position, sometimes resent the exclusive devotion of the Vaishnava to the Lord, and thus they try to cause the devotee to fall down, as described in this verse. Surakrita Bhavon Tadaya. But the demigods here point out that Krishna is directly the protector of his devotees. Therefore, so-called impediments become stimuli for further spiritual advancement for a sincere devotee. The demigods here state, "We thought, our dear Lord, that we could disturb your consciousness by our foolish tricks. But by your mercy, even your devotees pay little heed to us, so why should you take our foolish behavior seriously?" The word yadi here is used to indicate the certainty that Krishna is always the protector of his surrendered devotees. Although there may be many obstacles on the path of the sincere devotee who is preaching the glories of the Lord, such obstacles increase the determination of the devotee. Therefore, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the continuous obstacles presented by the demigods form a kind of ladder or stairway upon which the devotee steadily progresses back to the kingdom of God. A similar verse appears in Srimad-Bhagavatam 10.2.33. Tata nate madhavatava kakpachid brashanti margat twahibadda sauridaha twaya bigupta vichidanti nirbhaya vinayakani kapamurdasu prabho. O Madhava, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the Goddess of Fortune, if devotees completely in love with you sometimes fall from the path of devotion, they do not fall like non-devotees, for you still protect them. Thus they fearlessly traverse the heads of their opponents and continue to progress in devotional service. I mean, how good is that? It's spot on. Text 11. Some men practice severe penances to cross beyond our influence, which is like an immeasurable ocean with endless waves of hunger, thirst, heat, cold, and other conditions brought about by the passing of time, such as the sensuous wind and the urges of the tongue and sex organs. Nevertheless, although crossing this ocean of sense gratification through severe penances, such persons foolishly drown in a cow's hoofprint when conquered by useless anger. Thus they exhaust the benefit of their difficult austerities in vain. Purport. Those who do not accept devotional service of the Supreme Lord can be considered in two categories. Those engaged in sense gratification are easily conquered by the demigods through various weapons, such as hunger, thirst, sexual desire, lamentation for the past, and vain hoping for the future. Such materialistic fools, infatuated with the material world, are easily controlled by the demigods, who are the ultimate supplying agents of sense gratification. But according to Sridhar Swami, persons who attempt to subdue the desires of the material senses and thus avoid the control of the demigods without surrendering to the Supreme Lord are even more foolish than the sense gratifiers. Checkmate. Although crossing the ocean of sense gratification, those who perform severe penances without service to the Lord eventually drown in tiny puddles of anger. One who simply performs material penances does not actually purify his heart. By one's material determination, one may restrict the activities of the senses, although one's heart is still filled with material desires. The practical result of this krodha, the practical result of this is krodha, or anger. We have seen artificial performers of penance who have become very bitter and angry through denial of the senses. Being indifferent to the Supreme Lord, such persons do not achieve ultimate liberation, nor can they enjoy material sense gratification. Rather, they become angry, and through cursing others or enjoying false pride, they uselessly exhaust the results of their painful austerities. It is understood that when a yogi curses, he diminishes the mystic power he has accumulated. Thus, anger gives neither liberation nor material sense gratification, but merely burns up all the results of material penances and austerities. Being useless, such anger is compared to a useless puddle found in a cow's hoofprint. Thus, after crossing over the ocean of sense gratification, the great yogis who are indifferent to the Supreme Lord drown in puddles of anger. Although the demigods admit that the devotees of the Lord actually conquer the miseries of material life, it is understood here that a similar result is not to be obtained by so-called yogis who are not interested in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Poetry in motion. Text 12. While the demigods were thus praising the Supreme Lord, the all-powerful Lord suddenly manifested before their eyes many women who were astonishingly gorgeous, decorated with fine clothes and ornaments, and all faithfully engaging in the Lord's service. Oops. Purport. Lord Narayan showed his causeless mercy toward the demigods by relieving them of their false prestige. Although the demigods were proud of their personal beauty and female companions, the Lord showed that he was already being adequately served by innumerable gorgeous females, each of whom was far more beautiful than any female companion imagined by the demigods. The Lord manifested such uniquely attractive women through his own mystic potency. Text 13. When the followers of the demigods gazed upon the fascinating mystic beauty of the women created by Narayan Rishi and smelled the fragrance of their bodies, the minds of these followers became bewildered. Indeed, upon seeing the beauty and magnificence of such women, the representatives of the demigods were completely diminished in their own opulence. Text 14. The Supreme Lord of Lords then smiled slightly and told the representatives of heaven, who were bowing down to him, before him, "Please choose one of these women. Whomever you find suitable for you, she will become the ornament of the heavenly planets." Purport. Narayan Rishi was almost laughing upon seeing the defeat of the demigods. However, being extremely grave, he did not actually laugh. Although the demigods might have thought, "We are simply low-class fools in comparison to these women," the Lord encouraged them to choose one of the women, whomever they consider equal in character to themselves. The beauty thus selected would become the ornament of heaven. Text 15. Vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the servants of the demigods selected Urvashi, the best of the Apsaras. Placing her in front of them out of respect, they returned to the heavenly planets. Text 16. The servants of the demigods reached the assembly of Indra, and thus, while all the residents of the three heavens listened, they explained to Indra the supreme power of Narayana. When Indra heard of Narayana Rishi and became aware of his offense, he was both frightened and astonished. "17. We'll stop here. We're going to the next incarnation. It's wonderful, isn't it, how there's more kind of details of the story and what happened and their feelings and exchanges than in the other parts. just gets more and more. Okay, we'll stop the reading here for tonight, and we'll enter into our open mic section of our. Of course, we have Giriraj Swami here now, so we can also inquire submissively. Those of you who want to know more about what we just heard, or anything else for that matter. Or if you care to give some reflections, Maharaj, it's also, if you'd like to give reflections on this section.
No, I'll hear from others.
You wait. Wait till the right moment. Okay. Give that mic to that man with the glasses.
Started. I thought that was a pretty good the statement. The eternal form of the living entity is devotional service to the personality of Godhead.
Whoa.
I gotta let that one sink in a little bit. You know, just if you'd like to comment on that, that would be awesome.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. The eternal form of the living entity is devotional service to the personality of Godhead. That was a little excerpt of one of the purports. I was just wondering if y'all can elaborate on that.
Well, it calls to mind Lord Chaitanya's statement, Jive Swarupai Krishnara Nitya Das. And Swarup, it can mean form or constitutional position. And Lord Chaitanya says that the Swarup of the living entity is that he's the eternal servant of Krishna, which seems to be the same as what you just read.
What came into my mind is something that I heard from Srila Prabhupada in another place, that the basic platform of all the relationships in the spiritual world is dasya, is servitude. So it's very interesting that Maharaj brought up the example of Lord Chaitanya quoting this or saying this, because he was saying it to Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami had come to him and very submissively, with straw between his teeth literally, said, you know, I'm thought to be a learned person and an important person, and indeed he was. He was like a chief minister to a king, and he knew Persian and Sanskrit and so many other languages, and he was a learned scholar. And he said, but I'm such a learned scholar, I don't even know who I am. Who am I? Now we know from other scriptures that he actually does know who he is, and Lord Chaitanya knows who he is also. But he didn't say, you're Manjari, a servant of Radharani. He said, you're a servant of Krishna in a generic sense, to teach us that even a liberated soul, such as Sanatana Goswami, when he approaches the spiritual master for shelter and knowledge about himself, he gives it's not that he can't be a spiritual master if he doesn't tell you who you are personally in the spiritual world. There's some illusion and some misconceptions going on about that in various places, especially in India. But Lord Chaitanya, by Lord Chaitanya's example, he showed us that first we have to learn that we're the servant of Krishna in all cases, under all circumstances. And I heard Gopi Pranadana Prabhu today say something relevant. he said, and I think I mentioned this maybe in the beginning, which not everybody was here. He said that the material world is such that it requires all kinds of shastric rules and regulations and angles of vision and, dharma shastras and artha shastras and karma kanda and jnana kanda and upasana kanda and all these things, and they don't always apparently agree with one another. And he said, but in the spiritual world, there's only one rule. Is it pleasing to Krishna or not? And families are there in the spiritual world. You can read about it in the Rasa Shastras. But they're all more attached to Krishna than even they are to their own family members. Every single one of them, whether they be mothers or fathers or children or domestic animals or trees in the forest or whatever. So when the most elevated personalities introduce themselves and who they are in relationship with Krishna, Krishna's queens, for example, when they're interviewed by Draupadi, they all say, and that's how I became a maidservant of Krishna, a sweeper in Krishna's house. Yes, Prana.
That purport to text 10 was really, really nice. And it says, although there may be many obstacles on the path of the sincere devotee who is preaching the glories of the Lord, such obstacles increase the determination of the devotee. And then it says, therefore so-called impediments become stimuli for further spiritual advancement for a sincere devotee. And so sometimes, though, myself and other devotees, we might meet obstacles, and instead of feeling more determined, there might be a feeling of discouragement and hopelessness. This feeling of hopelessness, which leads to depression and leads to thoughts of leaving or something like this. I'm inquiring into maybe some commentary about what is that, how to expose that, how to deal with that, how to basically not fall down that trap of discouragement.
I'm reminded of an exchange between His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Damodar Swami and Srila Prabhupada. Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada, I have only one department, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and I have so many problems. And you have the whole worldwide movement. I can't even imagine how many problems you have to deal with. And Srila Prabhupada replied, problems? I don't see any problems. I just see service to my Guru Maharaj. So, obstacles, it's just, contending with an obstacle is just another form of devotional service. It's really not a different category. Our minds might place it in a different category, but actually it's not in a different category.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. He just paraphrased what you just read. He just paraphrased that. So a ladder. So nice. Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, Matthew.
Thank you. I was also really appreciating that purport about impediments becoming stimuli I was thinking about how the mistakes made by the demigods trying to create problems is an opportunity to have service. And I was thinking about how Krishna says he is adventure, and how a devotee that falls doesn't fall like a normal non-devotee. How there's so much opportunity to relish Krishna's pastimes in that. And I was just wondering how Srimati Radharani's statement that everyone is a devotee except for her, like how is that applicable to this like masterful?
Well, let's not go there yet. Let's not go there yet. We don't want to go right to Radharani like that. It's described, we need sambandha gyan. We need knowledge of how things are working and how it is that, that's why the first part of this section, if you remember, Nirmala is describing how the external, the material world is considered to be the external body of Krishna. And therefore, everything in it is meant to be used in his service. So to go to Radharani and to, try to think about that, how someone could think that everyone else is a devotee except for me, when we're in the position that we're in, that thought will take us. It's kind of like, rather than taking the ladder we're supposed to be taking and go over the obstacles, we're just trying to, I don't know exactly what, take a high-speed elevator. It's just possible. Anything's possible. Krishna can do anything. But I think that train of thought is not correct. Better the idea to first of all, where I am, who I am, how do I understand how to learn how to think that what I do or don't do is pleasing to Krishna. And from that platform, then you can step over, all the obstacles. The point that you were making, and I thought was, I think, very relevant, is that if a person is sincere and surrenders to Krishna, really surrenders, not just putting on a show so that he can be a big person or a special person in this world, but actually surrenders to Krishna, then from that point on, Krishna takes care of that person. And Sridhar Swami discusses in that famous verse that Prabhupada probably paraphrases as much as any other verse, Tattenu Kampam Susamikshemana. And there it describes the purport, the commentary that Sridhar Swami writes and is paraphrased by our godbrothers in that purport in the Bhagavatam, is that even a sincere devotee, sometimes in the mind there's lingering material desires in the mind. And the Lord sees that, and because the person's actually surrendered to him, then from that time on he takes care of that person. And the things that happen to him after that appear to be fall downs, or that appear to be karmic reactions, they're actually not karmic reactions. And the devotee, because the devotee is sincere, and this is the test of our sincerity, he tolerates those obstacles and those apparent reactions from even the tendency to do bad things, and even sometimes we do bad things. And he'll give a response which appears to be a karmic reaction to that thing, which is not a karmic reaction, it's medicine being administered by the Lord that's just the right medicine for the right thing that needs to be overcome. And the devotee who's actually devotee and sincere, he thinks this is good. It's well worth the effort to tolerate this because I want to be with the Lord. And then Sridhar Swami says at the end of that purport, if you want to go into fire, you have to become fire. And similarly, if you want to be with Krishna, you have to undergo a very rigid purificatory process that brings us to the point of being pure so that we can actually be acceptable for Krishna.
Well said.
Yes, Prerna.
I was wondering if, I think Srila Prabhupada says something like devotional service is voluntary, independent, spontaneous, voluntary, something like that. So this voluntary, I'm wondering if we can understand, if you'd like to comment on what that practically means in performing our devotional service. Sometimes we might think it's a mechanical thing. I'm just here, I'm doing it. But it seems like surrender is a voluntary thing that the devotees in the spiritual world, they're always voluntarily surrendering to Krishna's will, and thus they're inspired to do various activities and whatnot. So how can we volunteer our free will to serve Krishna's will?
As you were speaking, I thought of something that might not appear to directly address the question, but Srila Prabhupada initiated a disciple and gave him the name Bhavananda. Bhava means, we read the other day, it's related to Bhava, what comes into existence. And it means the material world. So he gave him the name Bhavananda, which means the bliss of the material world. So when the disciple got that name, he was concerned what Srila Prabhupada was trying to say by giving him that name. And Srila Prabhupada replied that a devotee's pleasure lies in Krishna's pleasure. And the greatest pleasure that we can give Krishna is to bring people to him by preaching. And that preaching can be done only in the material world. So Bhavananda, the bliss of the material world, is preaching and giving Krishna the greatest pleasure, which in turn results in the devotee experiencing the greatest pleasure.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Just repeating.
Beautiful, Maharaj, beautiful.
Just repeating.
Very beautiful. Well, just that you could remember it from all that years ago, that's sadhu, sadhu. And it's actually the same that I heard from Gopi. I mean, it's consistent, see? If we hear these literatures together like this, and we keep hearing them, and we don't just come as a, but hear every day, and hear, and try to understand, and hear, and try to understand, and hear, and hear the explanations, and the reflections, and the answers, and then gradually the pieces of the puzzle, they fit together. And then we can see for ourselves. That's what pratyakshaavagamam dharma means. You can't volunteer, if you don't accept who you are, if you don't know who you are. You can't know what's good for you if you don't know who you are. So the surrendering begins with the realization that we're not the body, that we're spirit souls, and then that realization goes to the next thing. If you're not the body, what are you? Then you're a spirit soul. Well, if you're a spirit soul, what is that? It's a part of the Supreme Spirit Soul. And then what is my duty? It is to serve the Supreme Spirit Soul. Departs. So this is the Sambandha Gyan that you need to have fixed. I heard Shivaram Maharaj say something very nice. He said, if you want to build a very tall building, you have to go down deep underneath the ground to support it. Foundation. If you don't have a big foundation, you try to build a big building, then it's going to crumble. It's not going to be, effective. It's not going to be practical. So I think, my take on it is that we need to actually become fixed in the basics, and we need to, keep hearing and chanting and associating and doing these 5 activities of devotional service sincerely, and that purifies the heart. It cleanses the heart. By chanting Hare Krishna sincerely under the instructions of our Guru, and completing the prescribed number of rounds, even if we're not really realizing everything all the time when we do it, even if we don't feel like doing it. The story comes to mind, Gargamuni, when he first came to 26th Avenue, 22nd Avenue, and it was his first time, and all the devotees were there waiting for Prabhupada to enter, and when Prabhupada entered, they all got up, and then they bowed down. And Gargamuni was just standing there. He said, I felt like a flagpole in a bed of daisies or something. That's how he. And then Prabhupada looked at him and he said, aren't you going to bow down? And Gargamuni said, I don't feel like bowing down. And Prabhupada said, bow down and then you'll feel like bowing down. And then he bowed down, and he said, after that he felt like bowing down from that time on. So it's not for us, it's the point. Volunteer doesn't mean, we do something and we get something out of it, Volunteer means it's for Krishna, it's for Krishna's pleasure. This is my position, this is my natural identity, it's my natural. And when I do something other than that, then I feel unnatural and I suffer. So what did Prabhupada say about that? This takes a little intelligence. It takes a little intelligence to act properly, even though you sometimes don't feel like it. Because it's not good for you not to.
There's
Yes,
one.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, no.
There's one place where Srila Prabhupada talks about the devotee voluntarily accepting suffering in the course of preaching. And that he takes such suffering, sometimes even death, as austerities executed for the pleasure of the Lord. And sometimes when there's no external pleasure or reward, the internal pleasure is greater. I remember many instances in the early days in India. There was one time, I mentioned it recently, I was getting the first Bengali Back to Godhead magazine printed in Calcutta, and I was going to a press that was very far north. And one night on the way back, it was like really raining heavily, and there were no, at least there wasn't much drainage in Calcutta, so the water just rose. And there were no rickshaws or taxis. So I was just like walking along in this heavy downpour of rain with my legs in the water. But internally, I felt very blissful, because the only reason I was there was for the service of my Guru Maharaj. There's no other reason. And so I felt very blissful. So if we're in a situation where there could be other reasons for being there besides service, such as whatever perks or benefits you get, your motive could be mixed, and so your realization of bliss would be dampened or diluted. So, I mean, that's what I found, that being in a situation that was materially uncomfortable and being there obviously only for the sake of service to the Guru, I felt blissful internally.
Sarva has got something over there.
When you mentioned about Gargamuni overcoming the feeling not to bow down, it seemed like the principle of overcoming obstacles is like in athletics or fitness training. Sometimes you have a little weight that's a little bit beyond your easy capacity, but it strengthens you when you overcome it. So this idea of a ladder and the obstacles helping you is like, it seems like that by serving Krishna and the spiritual master, we get stronger and more of the qualities of a devotee just by doing the service, whether it's easy or a little challenging.
I heard Prabhupada say another thing. If you want to lift a bull, not so easy. You have to be very strong to lift a bull. So if you want to lift a bull, then you lift a calf every single day. until it becomes a bull. Then you'll be able to lift the bull. Of course, the other things that are going to have to go with that, your muscles have to go strong and this and that and the other thing, but it's the same example. You can't go there and think, first of all, you have to do the right thing for a long time.
Online as well.
Oh, go ahead. We have some.
Rati Manjari.
Jai Rati, she's in Vrindavan, or maybe in Mayapur right now.
All right. Dear Maharajas, please accept my most humble obeisances. Thank you for sharing your deep realizations of Krishna consciousness day after day, year after year. We depend fully on your mercy. Tonight, we heard about the useless lamentation about the past and the vain hope for the future of the materialistic persons. Would you please elaborate about the difference between the lamentation of a materialist and the lamentation of a devotee?
That's in your department. It's a softball pitch. Knock it out of the park.
That was just a curveball you threw.
That's how I broke my elbow. I found out I had dislocated elbows by throwing the curveball. Got out of the army for that also. Good thing.
Well, in one exchange with Srila Prabhupada in Juhu, in a very dramatic way, he said, "Our only lamentation is that people are not taking to Krishna consciousness." And in that he was, paraphrasing or echoing Prahlad Maharaj, who said that for himself he has no difficulty because wherever he is, he can merge himself into the ocean of the Lord's glories and feel transcendental pleasure. But his only lamentation is that there are so many fools and rascals who are not Krishna conscious, and he knows that without Krishna consciousness they cannot be happy, and so he's always thinking of ways and means, making plans how to bring them to Krishna consciousness. So, of course, our acharyas in their songs and prayers, they do express lamentation for their fallen conditions and inability to serve nicely. And certainly those are Vaishnava sentiments. But Srila Prabhupada really was in the mood of a preacher, and he wanted us to be in the mood of preachers, and so that was the lamentation he emphasized, the lamenting that people are not Krishna conscious, not taking to Krishna consciousness.
This brings to mind the ultimate lamenter. Once Lord Chaitanya himself went to Haridas Thakur's place in Jagannath Puri. She would go every day to meet with Haridas Thakur. And that day, he was in an intense anxiety. And he came to Haridas Thakur and he said, "Haridas, how will the living beings be delivered? I'm so much anxiety." And Haridas Thakur's immediate response was, "My Lord, please don't be in anxiety." And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada states, this is service. To try to reduce the anxiety that Lord Chaitanya feels, seeing the suffering of the conditioned souls, all of us, in this material world. There's much more to it. There was a long conversation in which Haridas Thakur pointed out to the Lord that, you remember when Vasudev Datta approached you with that request that please deliver all the fallen souls, and if you think that their reactions have to be paid for, you just leave me here in the material world by myself, and I'll take all those reactions on my head, just so that everyone else can go back. And Lord Chaitanya started to cry. And he said, "Vasudev Datta," he said, "your desire is so pure that you can consider it already done." So there's an element of wanting to relieve Lord Chaitanya's anxiety, and it's a real anxiety because it's right there in the dialogue when Lord Chaitanya is speaking. He uses the word anxiety. And if you do that, then it says in the purport that you automatically become a confidential. This is how you become a confidential devotee of the Lord. You dedicate your full energy, internally and externally, to reduce the anxiety Lord Chaitanya feels, seeing the conditioned souls. And obviously that means bringing the conditioned souls, as Maharaj said, as Prabhupada said, to him. So it's a perfect match. Yes.
I was really, I liked the part when you were speaking about how Naranarayana Rishi manifested the women and kind of killed the false pride of the demigods, and it kind of brought to mind the pastime in Krishna book where Brahma is stealing the cows, and Srila Prabhupada compares it to the power of a glowworm at night. And then I kind of thought even in our own case, the Bhagavatam brings, like, while we're trying to overpower, like, lord over the material nature, Bhagavatam kind of shows us our frailties, our, like, how it's all just our false pride, and then instead of chastising us, it's actually, he presents us this rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths to be our ornament, to preach and kind of overcome all of these difficulties.
Well said. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much. You're hearing nicely. And this brings up another point I heard from Prabhupada just today. He said, even if you think that you have to become a scholar to become a great devotee, it's just not true. All you have to do is hear and understand and repeat.
Srila Prabhupada told me that when you're speaking, if you just repeat what I've written in my purports in your own words, everyone will think you're a great scholar.
With regard, you were saying to alleviate the anxiety of Lord Chaitanya, his devotional work. Will be the same if I, as a devotee, trying to release another devotee's anxiety?
Yes,
as well?
of course. Of course.
Okay. No question.
Yes. Releasing it, you automatically reduce the anxiety of Lord Chaitanya when you try to reduce the anxiety of others, but particularly his devotees, because they're most dear to him. So if you try to release the anxiety of a devotee, then that's the best way to release the anxiety of Lord Chaitanya.
Yes, because I was thinking about the devotee care that we have to have between each other, helping each other with that purpose.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing.
Hare Krishna. I had a question about how we view everything as Krishna's mercy. What is the lesson we can take from Sanatana Goswami chastising Rupa Goswami for taking from Srimati Radharani? Is it?
You're pretty attached to Srimati Radharani, aren't you? You want to go there. Why do you always want to go there? Why do you always want to go?
I just want to know the lesson that we can take from.
You can't take any lesson from that. That's pure Leela. That's the highest level of loving exchange between devotees and Krishna. That's not for you right now. That's not understand. You shouldn't go there.
Anxiety that we shouldn't even be in the position that we need.
Yeah, but anyway, better use the example of Jiva Goswami, who got chastised by Rupa Goswami because a fool came to him to challenge him to become a great scholar by defeating Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami, he was so absorbed in devotional service, He said, this is a complete waste of mine. What do you want me to do? He said, sign this paper, and that means I'll have evidence that I... He said, sure, here, and he just signed it. And Jiva Goswami was listening outside, and he heard this, and he said, what was that about? He said, well, I just defeated your uncle. He said, signed right here. He said, really? What was the discussion about? And then Jiva Goswami just tore him to pieces. And then it came to Rupa Goswami's attention that he did that, and he banned him from the association of the devotees. And finally, I think it was Sanatan who found him. Sanatan found him. He was living in a little, little, I don't know what it was, a ditch in the road or something. He was just living there, and and he wasn't eating, and he was just so. We'll get there. If we go through the Goswamis, then we'll eventually get to, Lalita and Radharani and, those exchanges. First thing first.
One more small comment. Rati Manjari. She says, thank you, very beautiful. What would be an appropriate hope for the future for a devotee?
It's my turn. Your turn. I just said something.
Well, in one sense, our goal is to become Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalaya or Dasa Dasa Anudasa. So, hope to be the servant of 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 Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. Srila Prabhupada, well, I think all devotees, notably Srila Prabhupada, prayed to be an instrument in the hands of his Guru Maharaj, prayed to be a puppet. So, yeah, pray. And we constantly pray. There's one very nice talk Srila Prabhupada gave in London on the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, where it's mentioned that Kapi Dwaja, that Arjuna had the flag of Hanuman on his chariot. And Srila Prabhupada said that that Arjuna's mood was that just as you served your master, Lord Ramachandra, by fighting for him, so I, please give me your mercy that I can also serve my master, Krishna, by fighting for him. And Srila Prabhupada said that's the mood of a devotee, that he's always begging for mercy. And then he quoted Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Rupa Raghunatha Padayara Shah Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. He said that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, every line, he's praying for the mercy of Rupa Raghunath. He said that's the mood of a devotee, that at every stage he's praying for the mercy of his superiors to do his service.
Yes. And Srila Prabhupada's purports give us the essence of all of the previous acharyas' comments, distilled and so that we can understand them. And he leaned heavily on Vishwanath everyone, but he was particularly leaned heavily on Vishwanath. And there was one commentary that he kind of brought to us, our attention, in a way that I thought was very appropriate to this question. Yeah, it was the commentary to Bhagavad Gita, 241. Vyavasyatmika buddhir ekeha kudunandana bahushaka yanantashta buddha yogarusainam. And Vishwanath's commentary about that was that the order of the spiritual master is the life and soul of the disciple, which fits right in with what you just said and what Prabhupada said. So if you can come to the point where the order of your spiritual master and the previous acharyas is your life and soul, then you've achieved the goal. Then your aspirations are achieved. Because if you do that, then automatically their mercy of all of them flows down to you, and you can understand and do anything. The descending potency comes from that. So we're going to stop our program for tonight, our reading and reflections. Maharaj, I'd like to thank you deeply as a representative of everybody in the room. Thank you so much for coming to spend time with us. Please come and spend more. You deepen and thicken the nectar and make it into ambrosia. And because of your loyal way that you repeat what Srila Prabhupada has said to you, and you have a vast ocean of experience and things that you remember about him. It's very unique and very wonderful. So we hope you come and spend more time.
Well, thank you. I would like to.
And we thank all of you that keep coming to hear the Bhagavatam and go deeper into this territory of becoming qualified to find out who we are by this process. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
See you tomorrow night. Same time. Wait, tomorrow's Sunday. Tomorrow's Sunday?
Yes.
Tomorrow night we'll see you at 4:30 in the afternoon Central Time, right here in the live studios at Radha Lane. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.